I'm Tammy, and this is Collard Valley Cooks, and today we are experimenting with a new recipe for yellow cake layers, and I made this special for one of our viewers because she wanted to make her husband a yellow cake layer. He loves our chocolate coffee layers, and so she sent me a message and requested that I create this cake. So anytime y'all want something and you want me to give it a try, then just ask me. All right, we're going to try to get this cake mixed up and in the oven because it is hot in the 90s today. We've got a half cup of butter room temperature. We're going to go ahead and add it to the mixer. We're going to add 3/4 cups of oil to the mixer. The sugar in this cake is 2 cups. 1. 2. Now you're going to add your eggs one at a time, and they should be room temperature. Just 1. You're going to have 3 of them. 2. And 3. Now we're going to be adding sour cream, and we are going to add a half cup of sour cream. Half cup of sour cream. This is self-rising flour, but we're adding a little bit of soda because we're using sour cream in it, okay? And that's a half teaspoon of baking soda. And then you're also going to use a teaspoon of baking powder. So we're going to throw that in. We're going to go ahead and add our vanilla. And then all we have left is our flour and our milk and water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a cup of flour. And we're going to put this on so we don't throw the flour out. We're going to add 1/2 cup of water. This is going to be a real runny batter. Super moist cake. And here comes another cup of self-rising flour. One-half cup of milk. And then we just got a half cup of flour left. That's all there is to it. Simple dimple. You're going to mix that a couple of minutes. Now we're going to go down our recipe and make sure everything's in it. We've got the flour, we got the soda, the baking powder, the sugar, the butter, the oil, the 3 eggs, the sour cream, the milk, the water, the vanilla. And that's it. Now let's scrape our sides just in case any of this might be left on the edges. It doesn't feel like it is. This is a super runny batter. It's going to be a super moist yellow cake layer. And if you want it to have more of a yellow color, we could just go ahead and add another egg yellow to it just to give it some more color. Now my eggs are fresh. If you don't have fresh eggs and you want it to be real yellow, you could always add a little food coloring. Because my fresh eggs yolk is going to be more yellow than the store eggs. So I'm just going to add one more of these yellows to it. Just to make it just even a little bit more yellow in color. It's really all I'm doing this for. So you don't have to waste the extra egg if you don't want to. And you're just going to let it mix a couple of minutes, and then we're going to pour it into our cake plates. I'm going to spray my pans with cooking spray. I got to wipe off the counter anyway, so I'm just doing it all right here. I'm also going to put a parchment round in the bottom of these because the last couple of times I've made cakes in these, they wanted to stick. You can buy these parchment rounds on the website under baking, shop now and then baking section. They come in handy for sure. You can just tell by looking at these rounds that this pan is just a tiny little bit wider on the bottom. They're all 8-inch, so you might want to put that one on the bottom when you ice it. Just try to get it in there evenly, and you can always weigh them if you want to be precise. So I'm curious to find out if this is going to work. Now this is just a cake layer that I've just took my chocolate cake that we make and that we love so much. It's got a very tender, moist, homemade layer. It's our best chocolate cake to me. And it's called the Chocolate Coffee Layers in the Volume 1 cookbook. And I have altered it to be yellow. See y'all in a few minutes. All right, I froze my layers. And you're going to be able to tell by looking at them that they were a little sticky. For one, I need some new cake pans, and I ordered me some. And for another, this cake is my chocolate coffee layer recipe, and I just left the cocoa out of it. So I have altered it just a hint so that this won't happen again. And this is going to be my new yellow cake recipe because it's super moist, all right? So the yellow cake recipe that's in my Volume 1 cookbook is good, but this one's going to be even moister, and so it'll be going in the master cookbook. All right, we're going to start out making some sour cream chocolate icing, which is absolutely delicious. So we're going to start with a pound of powdered sugar, and you're going to mix your cocoa and your powdered sugar together. I like to do that before I use cocoa. I always mix it in the flour or the sugar, whatever I'm trying to accomplish. And that way it gets distributed better in there. And this calls for a 1/3 cup of cocoa powder. And I'm using Hershey's. Here's a 1/3 cup. And we're just going to take a whisk and whisk this together good. I hope y'all are having a wonderful day. Me and Chris are. And it's going to be even better when we get a piece of this cake. I'm looking forward to it. So just mix your cocoa into your powdered sugar good with a whisk. Just like that. All right. That gets that. So you're going to use a stick of margarine or room temperature butter and a 1/3 cup of shortening. So I'm going to put this in there. I'm using the whisk attachment on my mixer today so that we can make a fluffy icing instead of using the paddle. And now we're going to get out a 1/3 cup of shortening. Now this is a buttercream, but I do use some shortening in it. If you don't have shortening or you don't want to use shortening, of course you can use all butter. So there goes a 1/3 cup of shortening. And we're going to turn this on and let it start beating up and getting fluffy. One thing that's a good practice to do when you're making a recipe is if you get everything out, which you should, every time you use something, you put it behind you. And that way, if there's something left on the counter that you haven't put in there, you know that you missed it. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to be using a half teaspoon of butter extract. And you do need to measure this because butter extract is pretty doggone strong. And then you're going to use a teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's a half teaspoon of butter. And we'll use 2 of these to get a whole teaspoon of vanilla. Now this is not extract, it's flavoring, so I might use a little extra. We're going to put our sour cream in there. You're going to be using, let's see, I believe it's a cup. Yeah, it's a half cup of sour cream, which is about what I've got in here. And I think it's going to be just right. A little bit more than I need. Sour cream going in. This is super delicious. I remember when I was just a teenager, they used to make a Duncan Hines cake mix that was called Sour Cream Chocolate. I made one of those almost every week, y'all, when I was a teenager. I loved them. Okay. Now, this recipe for this frosting is in our Volume 4 cookbook. It's just a buttercream I just made up one day, and it is absolutely the bomb. And so I hope you give it a try. You could make one for 4th of July or any time of year. This cake is good any time of year, birthdays, whatever. All in, just a little bit left in the bottom. All right, let me turn this off and get all this down in there, and then I'm going to whip it, put it up on high, and beat it about 2 minutes to get it nice and fluffy, okay? And that's why we're using the whisk. It's going to make a really pretty fluffy icing. Boy, that smells so good. I cannot wait to have a piece of this cake. Now, this layer that I'm making, I am going to do a voiceover on what I'm actually changing when I actually post this video. So y'all will actually hear the recipe that should work perfectly when you watch this video. And I do experiment and make my own cake layers, and I'm a pretty good baker. So I have my own recipes. It's not a copy of somebody else's, which most people can't say. I'm real funny about baking and coming up with things that are better even than my mama did. You know, I believe that you can always improve and get better. There's never a recipe that's perfect for everybody, all right? So this icing is, we love our fudge icing that we make, but this icing is one of my very favorites, personally. I like it better than the fudge, but now Chris and the kids like the real chocolatey fudge. I think Amy likes this one better. All right, so we're going to use a cake round, and you can get any of my items that you see in a video through our website. We are Amazon associates, and so you can actually find just about everything we use on there. And we love for you to shop with us. And you don't even have to buy what's on the link. You can just go through that link and enter Amazon, and we get credit for a percentage of what you buy because we are considered influencers now, which is absolutely amazing. Now, we are going to ice this cake. One of the reasons I chose this icing is because these cake layers were quite a mess. Because I was experimenting with a recipe. And I knew that this fluffy icing would do a great job of hiding its imperfections. All right? And sometimes that's what you need. So if you make a mess out of a cake and you want to use something that's going to make it pretty, you could always use this. This layer is crooked. I don't know if it's because I put it in the freezer crooked. And so it's frozen and it got crooked. So we'll see if there's another one that's a little crooked and we can level it off. Let's see. That one's a little crooked. This one's pretty straight. This one's a little crooked. Let me see it. Okay. So just put a dollop on it. Spread it around. Simple dimple. And put your last layer on. And this was the prettiest one. All right, and at this point, you're better off just putting a lot of icing on top. And then coming down the sides as you ice makes it easier to ice a cake, and it covers it without getting crumbs in it as bad. I'm hoping I have enough icing. I usually make a 2-layer cake with this icing. And I've made rectangular ones, you know, like the sheet cakes with it. I'll save this little bit just in case I need it for something. All right, here we go. So you just start on the top and you push it over and you spread. It's going to be cutting it close. Very close. So once you get it on there, if you've got some little places where you can see the cake, you can just try to cover it a little better. See. Try to use all the icing. Here's some down here. Showing a little. But it does help hide an uneven cake. Now this only had a pound of powdered sugar in it, so to me it's just enough. I mean, it's not too much, it's just enough. All right, I'm gonna use every little piece of it though. This is my last extra. Where should I put it? Down here on the bottom, right here. And now we're gonna try to make it prettier by swirling it a little bit, okay? So I'm gonna go around the edge at the very top first. And then we're just gonna swirl the top like this. And you can do it any way you want it. Here, I don't like the way that, let me kind of round it off a little bit. We'll just do it this way. All right, I got one little piece right here where the cake's showing. Yummy. All right, and then we're just going to swirl the sides a little bit. Well, maybe I'll do it this way. And of course, you don't have to decorate it. Another good way to decorate a cake like this, if for some reason you don't have quite enough icing, is with cake crumbs or cookies crushed up. You can put them, around the bottom or around the sides, and it hides a lot as well. So those are things that you can do. If you don't know how to ice a cake and make it pretty, you can always use pecans chopped up, almonds toasted. You make a couple of cupcakes when you're making your layers, and my layer recipe gives you plenty of cake batter, so you can do that. You can actually take those cupcakes and spread them over the top of a cooling rack. You would just take them and just spread them over the top like this, and it would create cake crumbs. And then you could go around the bottom of your cake or around the sides of your cake. Now, I'm just giving you tips on how you can make a cake pretty if you can't use an icing spatula and do a good job. All right, let's slice this up a piece. Now, I'm going to tell y'all why I changed the cake recipe just a tad. Because the original recipe had cocoa in it. Cocoa dries out a cake a lot. So you need additional things in a cake to make it moist when you add cocoa. Because this cake, I'm not using cocoa. It's a little too moist. And I'm going to tell you what I'm doing different, just so you'll know. You can tell by the crumb in the center of the cake that it was really hard to get completely cooked, like the edges. And I left it in there a while. I didn't take it out too soon. It also wanted to fall a little bit in the middle. So really, I could tell by looking at the layers when they came out of the oven, they had a little bit too much sugar in them. And that's one of the reasons why it wanted to sink in the middle and stick to the pan. And it had just a little bit too much moisture in it. Now, I kept the same amount of oils in the layer. All I did is reduce the sugar, and I reduced the amount of milk and water. So in the new recipe, which is what I'm going to reference in this video, even if I have to do a little voiceover, the layers will rise in the middle, and they won't be too sticky because of the sugar amounts, okay? And so I think this is going to be the best yellow cake, homemade yellow cake recipe you're going to be able to find. And I think you'll be real happy with it. Oh, it's so good. This icing just cannot be beat. I'm telling you, it's buttery, It's chocolate. The sour cream takes away from the sugary. I mean, it's just the perfect icing to me. Now, that mess of a cake, look how gorgeous it is. So, even if you mess up your cake a little when you flip it upside down or you do something, remember, you can always doctor it up and make it pretty with your icing. And if you want to do that, try and use a fluffy icing and not one that's like a cooked icing or something that's going to be harder to spread on the cake, that's going to want to tear the sides of the cake off the sides. Also, freeze your layers. If you have layers that are a little bit messy on the outside, freeze them and they're easier to ice, and ice them when they're frozen. And then one other thing, while I've got you on here, is just never give up. And the more you practice, the more you're going to be able to ice a cake. And remember that my mama was a cake decorator and she was a caterer. And I grew up learning how to play with a cake and icing. And so that's one reason I'm very comfortable trying to create new recipes. All right, let's give it a try. Now that's a homemade yellow layer that is super moist and super delicious. Man, it's good. Y'all got to give this one a try for sure. And I made this special for one of our viewers because she wanted to make her husband a yellow cake layer. He loves our chocolate coffee layers. And so she sent me a message and requested that I create this cake. So anytime y'all want something and you want me to give it a try, then just ask me. Hopefully I'll be able to do it. I hope y'all have enjoyed watching my experiment with the yellow layers and this delicious icing. It is the bomb. You've got to try it. If you've never visited our site before or watched the video, I hope you hit the like and subscribe button. We just want to tell you we love you and appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Cooking like our mamas did. Bye, love ya.